Welcome back. This is Matthew from Mini Wargaming, and this is Mini Wargamer Dave from miniwargaming.com.
Start saying it with a straight face.
I can't. I got to say it really close to the camera, right?
Yeah.
Oh. Anyway, as I talked about in the last video, we're going to go over the pre-100 Years War history now, at least what I've developed so far. I'm looking for your ideas, but at the same time, I'm more looking for your feedback and how you like what I'm talking about. Because there's going to be differing opinions as to what technology is going to develop. And I've based it off of what some scientists say, and I've also changed it to my own desires because, hey, I should be able to.
You can.
Yeah, like if Star Trek and Star Wars can be popular with the crappy science they have, then I can modify good science a little bit and still be okay.
You make like a filet mignon and like a machine?
Oh, no, that's not crappy science, actually.
What do you mean?
It's the fact that they have that replicator and they use it just to make food rather than like everything else. Like they do use it to make other components as well, but it's just like that's an enormously awesome piece of technology, and they kind of just use it for mundane things.
And they don't really describe how it works.
Right.
Not that they have to.
Well, I think if you really talk to a Trekkie, you probably find out that they did describe it somewhere in some
probably
book.
true, yeah.
In some website somewhere.
Like the minute in the episode
Yeah,
where they say it. and
something
you
like
said
that. I love Star Trek, by the way. It's just that the science is very, very weak. And that's fine because it was developed a long time ago, and then it kind of just grew from there. So, and it's okay. It's okay. It's sci-fi. It doesn't have to match everything. So sometimes we get a little stuck on everything has to be super realistic, and I don't agree with that. So anyways, mid-21st century. When I say mid-21st century, I'm talking 2050 to around 2075. I wanted to put it far enough ahead that it takes a while before we actually hit the year. I don't want to pull like a Back to the Future where it's actually coming up pretty soon and it's going to look so stupid because it's like, okay, this is nothing like what it actually turned out to be.
You know the other movie that did that?
What?
Time Cop.
What year did they put it to?
They put it to like 2000. I think they put it to like 2000. The movie was made in 95. They put it to like 2000.
They only put it 5 years ahead?
No, 95.
To 2000 is like 5 years
2000.
difference.
Was it 2000 or was it like 205 or 210? It was like really close. It was like 10 or 15 years in the future.
And they made like the drastic changes to everything?
The cars looked like Lego cars, and they were so blocky and stupid.
Yeah. See, I find that interesting with near future sci-fi, what they normally do. They usually go too far. It's like in the near future, every single building will have been replaced. It's like, what? You look at things like, well, what's the one I'm thinking of? Minority Reports, like that.
Oh,
or iRobot kind of thing. Like I guess iRobot never tells you what year it is, but still, it's like everything's been changed. But it doesn't really matter. It's fun stuff. It's okay. It's sci-fi. Well, the worst one is Meet the Robinsons. Have you seen that movie?
Do they have blue hair?
It's a cartoon, and it's like 25 years in the future, and buildings are inflated. Like it looks like something that should be like 10,000 years in the future in a psychedelic cartoon world.
Oh, okay.
But it's only like 25 years in the future. But that's okay. It's a cartoon. It doesn't have to be. So I'm trying to stay far enough away from now. And you know what? The stuff that happens in the mid-21st century in my timeline, if it changes a bit, it's not going to drastically change the end. I just wanted to create a cool development up until it actually started so that we have a basis for what the world has become.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through the different technologies and scientific developments, and we'll even talk a bit about some ideas for politics and world events. You know, if anything pops in your mind as well, just let me know what you think.
I'll ask you.
Yeah.
Something's amiss.
And of course, we have our forums. I'll put a link right below the video to the Dark Potential forums, which is just a sub-forum in the Mini Wargaming forums. And so if you want to help, give ideas, just go ahead and post there. I really appreciate the feedback. You can post comments here too, but I'll admit I do read the forum topics more often than I read the comments because they're organized better. It's not just a ton of comments, it's actually threads with topics. And of course, if you want to submit concept art and all that kind of stuff, feel free. So, mid-21st century. In terms of genetics, stem cell research has really gotten better. It's developed to the point that pretty much any organ can be cloned. So heart transplants, lung transplants, no longer a big problem. You can clone that. And it's actually gotten even further. One thing that they're talking about right now is how to get an adult cell to revert to a stem cell. And this is real. I'm going to be mixing real science with science fiction when I'm talking here. So I'll try to differentiate what is real and what is made up. They're talking, a stem cell basically is when, when the sperm meets the egg at the beginning, those two cells become your entire body. And so they have all the genetic material to create eyes, hearts, lungs, bones, fingernails, hair. Those two cells contain all the genetic information you need to create all of that. It's pretty fantastic if you think about it.
That's really cool.
It's incredibly fantastic, incredibly complex. And so those are called stem cells. Basically, if you can harvest those cells, and they like to harvest those today by letting it multiply a bunch of times, so it's still very early stages of pregnancy, and then they harvest those stem cells, and then they try to manipulate them to grow into certain things. And you can see why there's a lot of controversy on this today.
Kind of like, I'm going to make my kids geniuses and athletes?
No, it's more like they harvest the stem cells so they can grow an organ for an organ transplant. Not so much that, we're not talking about manipulation of the DNA yet, more than just grabbing those stem cells so we can grow anything we want from them. Okay. That would grow in a human. And so they'll actually take them and they'll grow an ear on a pig. And they've actually done that. Done crazy stuff like that, and then they can cut off the ear and they can give somebody a new ear, and it matches.
Hold on, they grow a human ear on a pig.
Yeah, using the stem cells.
They grow it on the pig.
Yeah, they find that it works better that way than on just. They have to grow it on something living, and what human would allow that.
Like grafting.
Yeah,
it's like grafting.
Yeah, basically, it's pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah,
anyway,
that is crazy.
Anyway, the challenge, of course, the controversy that comes from that is that you're taking these unborn babies and you're killing them. Theoretically, like that's the controversy, is that when do they become a baby? Like as soon as they meet, and
that's a moral issue.
That's a moral issue. So what they're trying to do, and it's also is for other reasons too, is they want to take an adult cell. In other words, the stem cells that have become a fingernail or skin, and they would like to take those cells because those cells still contain all the information to create anything in your body, but most of that's been suppressed, so that your skin doesn't spontaneously grow into something else, because that would be awkward. And so if they're experimenting right now, real life, with how to take an adult cell, so a cell that's become what it's supposed to become, and reverting it back to a stem cell. And so I'm saying, and scientists predict that in the mid-21st century we'll have reached that. So I'm saying that's what happens, 2050 to 2075. Now you might wonder why I'm talking so much about this. Genetic stuff is actually going to be very important, so we'll get to that later in the century. So that's genetics. That's the main thing for genetics that I wanted to talk about. Nanotechnology, nanotechnology is where they can create tiny little machines.
Essentially cell robots.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. It's about the size of a cell. I think that's where nano comes down to. And so they've developed us to the point, we actually we do have nanotechnology today, but it's very primitive. And it's hard to get them to replicate and also to do what we want them to do. But by this point, they've actually developed them to the point that they can use them in health issues. For example, they can inject you with nanites that are programmed to attack viruses or disease cells, and actually be able to, without any intrusion on your body, like cutting you open, even perform surgeries. So these nanites could go in and they could cut you open from the inside without spilling any blood or anything like that.
This is today, real life?
No, this is going to happen in the mid-21st century.
Oh, okay, so we're talking in the future, fiction.
Yes, but it's something that they've theorized on. All the stuff you're going to see me doing in the 21st century are things that scientists believe will be happening soon. If anything, I'm pushing them back more than making them right there. So these are actually closer, possibly. That's the hard thing. There's always possibly, right? So yeah, they have that with nanotechnology. They don't yet have the nanotechnology to create molecules or align things like creating carbon nanotubes, as we'll talk about. That's actually one of the materials that they theorize could be used to make a space elevator. Global warming-wise, where it's continuing to become an issue because, and I'll talk about energy first, actually. Fossil fuels continue to be the main primary source. Nuclear power, nuclear fission, what we have today, is being used more, but safety is still an issue. A lot of nuclear power is being turned off today because they still can't figure out what to do with the waste products. They create all these waste products, and each time they think they found a way, it kind of backfires on them. Like there's one place where they had buried it, and it exploded. And that was really bad. And then you have things like Chernobyl, where these old reactors are still being used, and then the safety is just not there, and then boom, there goes the reactor, and the whole city has to be evacuated. And so you have all these issues that are stopping nuclear power from really providing as much as they can. It's theoretically the cleanest power that we have, except for the byproduct of the nuclear waste. So in the mid-21st century, I'm putting it that it's still a problem. Fossil fuels are still the primary source, And they're becoming more expensive, obviously, as they are harder to get. We're not going to run out of fossil fuels anytime soon, but we are running out of the easy-to-get fossil fuels, which means it costs more to get them. And in terms of dark matter, because dark matter obviously is going to play a big part in the game, considering the title of Dark Potential, dark matter is finally discovered in the mid-21st century. It's still theorized today. They have tons of theories out there, what it is.
So what is it?
So dark matter is discovered to be particles, which is one of the theories. And a particle that's only affected by gravity, which is why I can't see it. It's not affected by electromagnetic radiation, which means it will not absorb or emit photons or electrons.
Meaning you can't see them?
Which means it's
Or
impossible
feel them?
see them, or, well, no, you could feel them. Gravity could still have an effect there, but yeah, they do pass through you on their own. And so they've finally been able to discover them, but only in very small quantities. In other words, it still doesn't answer the whole dark energy of the universe thing. Like they have a certain calculation that they've made based on observations of gravity and everything in the universe, and those calculations have determined in their minds how much dark matter and dark energy exists in the universe. And this is real day, like today's science. But when they finally discover dark matter, they're finding that they're not discovering it in the quantities that is expected. And we don't find out until later on why that is. So they discover it is a particle. It's an elementary particle, like an electron or a quark or something that you want to look at like that. But it's only affected by gravity, not by nuclear forces. Well, actually, it is affected by nuclear forces as well, but we'll get into that later. Majorly affected by gravity, which is why it also affects gravity. And that's actually how they're able to capture it, is using gravity to do that. So global warming continues to be an issue because fossil fuels are still being used as a primary source of energy everywhere. In fact, it's become, as temperatures increase, tropical diseases are becoming more common. We're running into that issue today. We have, like the swine flu, those kind of things that have been happening.
Did you just say tropical or topical?
Tropical diseases. Diseases that normally would have been restricted to the warmer areas of the world have been spreading to the colder areas of the world because those colder areas are getting warmer.
West Nile.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. But more of these are becoming more prominent. So it's becoming a serious health issue and just becoming more and more part of life. Like you just get used to it. You think it's bad now, it gets worse, basically. Space travel-wise, we have our first manned mission to Mars. Don't have much more than that. It's just that they finally get there. So I'm not going to go into all the details of the technology of the spaceships. It's actually still very rudimentary. They probably solve the problem of not having gravity by having something spinning in the ship. I don't have that exactly worked out. But somehow they have to make artificial gravity happen on the spaceships. Otherwise, by the time the astronauts get to Mars, their bones will have atrophied so badly that they would have to crawl around when they get there for the first few weeks. And since they can only stay there for a short while before having to come back, if they want to be able to get back within a certain amount of time, then that's a problem. So there has to be some sort of artificial gravity from the ships. And so it'll probably be something like spinning, like you see in Mission to Mars. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen that movie?
Gary Sinise, yeah.
Yes, and they have that spinning part of the ship.
Yep.
That is one option, although that provides other problems, but we won't go into that right now. In other words, we have our first manned mission to Mars. And on that note, by this point, we've already had people go back to the moon as well, but that was even before the mid-21st century.
It only cost $10 a pound, too, so it's pretty...
No, there's no space elevator yet. This is still very expensive to go to the moon.
Oh,
It's
really?
still very expensive to get up to space.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Space travel is still severely hampered. If there's one thing that scientists agree on, is that this century is not going to be a space traveling century. And I'm kind of glad about that because it leaves it open for me to decide what's going to happen with that. Because there's just too much expense. And with the economy the way it is and the world the way it is, we just don't have enough excess money to put into space travel when there doesn't look to be like any economic gain from traveling in space.
Yeah, it's just all exploration. And for
Yeah,
what?
it's for curiosity and for science. Like you never know. Maybe on Mars you discover, which they will, certain resources that would make the trip worthwhile. Kind of like in Avatar, the trip all the way to this Pandora.
Yeah.
That moon has that unobtainium, which I think is a stupid name.
Unobtainium.
Unobtainium, that's what it is. They mine unobtainium.
Forgot what
They're
it was
not the first movie to call it unobtainium, but or the first sci-fi to do that. Anyway, so like that's worth a trip. Like they take armies over there because they bring it back, and I think they said it's like $1 million a kilo. That's how much money they make from this stuff. And so yeah, it's worthwhile for them to spend that money. It's corporations doing it. But as it yet stands, there's no major rich resources on Mars and Moon that have been discovered that really make it so a private corporation would fund a spaceship going there simply for the gain. And until you have that, it's going to be a slow project.